Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is Tuesday, October 27th, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me. The title of today's podcast, Closing Arguments Election 2020. We have 1 week to go until the 3rd of November, Election Day. And with early voting, and again, we're going to get to that, that's going to be a daily topic until Election Day, it appears that we may very well have an announced winner, maybe not necessarily on Election Day evening, but November 4th, November 5th seems to be pretty reasonable, unless, of course, it proves to be pretty close, which is a possibility. Now, despite the polls leaning towards a Biden-Harris victory, not just nationally, but across a lot of the state polls, especially where it counts in those battleground states, anything can happen. That was the same case in 2016 with respect to Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton held a lead, although not as high or not as big as Biden currently has on the national polls, and depending on the state, it varies. But in most instances, Joe Biden has a bigger lead than did Hillary Clinton. Now, the other thing, of course, there's a misconception out there that the polls just got it completely wrong. Well, polls aren't 100% accurate. That's understood as a given, at least it should be. A lot of the mismatch, if you will, was within a polling error, which is not usually discussed on the mainstream media. It's not discussed in this instance, because Trump is behind, it's not discussed by the Trump administration or the campaign, but it was within a polling error, and there were a few polls that did have Donald Trump winning. And don't forget, Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote. So for those who want to say, well, these polls are all wrong again, they weren't that far off last time. It was a polling error, and because Biden has a bigger lead than Hillary Clinton did, chalking it up to a polling error is probably not going to pull this one out of a hat. But Donald Trump can still win. There's still a week to go. Closing arguments. Is it going to be enough? He of course, is campaigning heavily across the country. A few stops in Pennsylvania alone yesterday, and several states today. I think Wisconsin, Michigan, even Nebraska, which tells you that the Trump campaign is fighting for every single electoral college vote they can possibly get. Because as we discussed here yesterday, but previously as well, you can have some funny-looking maps, and you can have Donald Trump winning some of those bigger states, even some of the bigger battleground states such as Pennsylvania, but if Biden can still chip away at some of the others, getting Wisconsin and Minnesota and Michigan and Nevada and Arizona, and if he can just pull out that Nebraska vote or that one district out of Maine, well, then he's at 270, and that's what's needed to win the presidency. So, with that said, with the president going all over the place in these states and where he's spending money, same situation with Joe Biden, where he's going, where he's spending money, that is indicative as to where these campaigns are concerned, where they're trying to seal up as many votes as they can possibly get. Now, Joe Biden definitely does not want to make the same mistake that Hillary Clinton did and sort of just stayed at home, didn't campaign heavily in those last days. Especially Joe Biden at this juncture, because Trump is hitting him hard. He's sleepy Joe Biden. He stays in his basement. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is flying all over the place. You cannot do that, which I think is why Joe Biden came out of Delaware yesterday to go and make a couple stops in Pennsylvania as well, because it wasn't looking good. Why aren't you out, Joe? Yes, we understand that this is COVID-19. Yes, we understand that you don't want to have this quote-unquote super spreader event, as which they accused the president of holding with all of these rallies across the country. Think of that what you will. But Biden has to be out there. He has to be seen. He has to be heard. Because the contrast between the two candidates, especially with their tone, with their style, with their rhetoric, couldn't be any further apart. So again, this is a referendum at the end of the day on Donald Trump. Do you want another 4 years of this, or don't you? The enthusiasm for Donald Trump is there within his base, but is his base going to be enough to get him over the finish line? The answer is no. It's not, because it appears this time there is going to be a huge turnout. Donald Trump won on low turnout. He only won by about 70,000, 80,000 votes across 3 states. tearing down that blue wall, if you will, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. That can easily be overtaken by Joe Biden, just with the Democrats who crossed the line, if you will, last time, going back to vote for Joe Biden. Independents, and even Republicans who said they're not going to vote for Hillary Clinton, but, maybe they didn't really care for Donald Trump, but there was no way that they were going to vote for Hillary Clinton. But this time, well, maybe they can tolerate Joe Biden, because Joe Biden is not Hillary Clinton. Low turnout last time for a number of reasons. Well, first, you had two of the most unpopular candidates, maybe in American history, on the presidential ticket, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. With respect to the Democratic side of the ticket, it was a coronation of Hillary Clinton throughout the entire process, despite the grassroots effort that was catapulting Bernie Sanders to a potential victory. He was railroaded, he was sidelined, and of course, he took it like a champ, if you will. He ate it. He could have made a stand. He could have been a true quote-unquote revolutionary for those ideas that he thinks are so important, but he didn't. He played the game. He played ball. Sit down and shut up, Bernie. Go to the sidelines. We'll buy you another house, another house, another house. Just sit there and take it. And he did. That's who these people are at the end of the day. He had his moment, and he blew it. Not that I'm advocating that he should have taken it. I'm not a supporter of Bernie Sanders, but at least that was his opportunity to do so, and he didn't. He towed the party line, and a lot of people were upset because he was railroaded to begin with, and then because he sat down and took it. So a lot of people who supported Bernie Sanders did not come out to vote, or they voted for him, they wrote his name in, or they voted for a Green Party candidate, and that, of course, hurt Hillary Clinton. And then, of course, there's a lot of people who thought there was no way that Donald Trump was going to win, and so they just stayed home. Why should I go out? Maybe it's cold outside, maybe it's raining, maybe it's snowing, whatever. I really don't have to vote. There's no way this joker is going to win. Hillary Clinton has the resume, She's going to mop the floor with him. The polls say she's going to win. And so people stayed home. And then Donald Trump won. So are those people going to make that quote-unquote same mistake again if they didn't like Donald Trump to begin with, but they just thought there was no way that he was going to win? That's why this is such an uphill battle for the president. Furthermore, why it's another reason it's such an uphill battle for the president is because he's his own worst enemy. He can't get out of his own way. He can't shut up. He can't stop tweeting. His rhetoric, his tweets are divisive. As a leader, it is your duty and obligation to unite the people, not divide them for political gain. That's not how it's supposed to work. To me, that's disqualifying in and of itself. But he can't get out of his own way. And there's a lot of blame to go around for the Democrats, too, just going after him since day one. And that might be something that upsets a lot of people, that gets people out to vote for Donald Trump. That's quite possible. But with so much going on right now, with the economic collapse, we are in the midst of the Greatest Depression, just most people don't realize it. Of course, if you're broke, about to get kicked out, you really understand that this is the Greatest Depression because you're living it, unfortunately. And neither of these jokers have a true plan of getting out of it. They want more of the same. The structural issues are completely ignored, not brought up in any of the debates, not brought up in any of the town halls that have been conducted with the general population. There's no talk of this whatsoever. It's COVID. Even though the economy is brought up, the structural issues are largely ignored. The debts, the deficits, the monetary policy, who's getting the money, why aren't the banks lending it to small businesses like they're supposed to? What's going on here? These questions aren't asked. And if they're not asked, they're not answered. And they're not even brought up. I mean, if I was running, I would bring them up. Even if they weren't asked. Especially if they weren't asked. Because if they weren't asked, then maybe that means the people don't even know what's going on. Maybe something's amiss here. Lack of education, perhaps. Which is why I'm voting for Jo Jorgensen of the Libertarian Party. I don't believe she's a panacea. I don't believe any of these people are a panacea. They're not supposed to be. That's not how our system works. But at least Jo Jorgensen and the Libertarian Party will educate the people on these structural issues that nobody else seems to want to talk about. And if the American people hear these arguments, I think most of them will be convinced. Yeah, you know what? This two-party system, it really is one party. I never really thought about it like that. $27 trillion in debt? Yeah, that didn't happen just because of the Republicans. Or that didn't happen just because of the Democrats. Then you go deeper. Then you look at the fraud and the corruption. You look at what's going on with the banking system and how much money they receive, how they get bailed out time and time again, how they can commit crimes, how they can admit to committing crimes. Nobody goes to jail. Maybe they pay a fine. And that fine is a fraction of the money they ended up stealing. So crime literally pays. Maybe the people need to be educated on some of this stuff. But you're not going to hear that from Thunder Thumbs. You're not going to hear that from Joe Biden. Because they're both very much a part of the system. There is no draining of the swamp, not even close. The military-industrial complex has received more money than they've ever received in a 4-year period. That's part of the swamp. Banking regulations have been reduced. So it allows these guys to treat the markets and the economy like an ever bigger casino, putting more and more people at risk. Yet if they mess up, they get bailed out, and you flip the bill. How is that draining the swamp? Explain this to me. You have a sign in your front yard that says drain the swamp, so you think this idiot's draining the swamp? Not even close. What are you paying attention to? You're not. You're just blinded by the idea. You're blinded by there's finally somebody up there who's saying some of the things that you want to hear, not doing some of the things here, but at least he's saying them, and that should be good enough. Well, newsflash, it isn't good enough, and he, the President of the United States, his closing argument isn't much about any policy whatsoever. It's demonizing the other side. It's fear-mongering. It's throwing more division across the board. And then coming up with some old 2016 playbook jabs of emails and laptops and all this other crap. The little boy who cries wolf. You want to pay attention to it? Be my guest. Do what you want. I'm not paying attention to it. I've heard it too many times. Not going. But knock yourself out. So that's what Trump's doing. He's making his rounds. Talking himself up the best he can. COVID. Doesn't want to talk about it anymore. Why? Because he doesn't know how to handle it. He knows he doesn't know how to handle it. And so he wants to blame the media for talking about it all the time. And I can understand, some of the coverage is a little over the top with COVID-19, but nonetheless, it is a global pandemic. It is serious. You have hospitalizations rising. You have ICU beds being filled to capacity. You have some medical facilities either starting to mention that they're going to have to start rationing care, maybe meaning turning people away or building more makeshift hospitals. Well, that clearly isn't rounding the turn, is it? So it doesn't fit the narrative. The other narrative that the president wants to push, of course, is the stock market. That's his barometer of success. Well, maybe not the best week here, at least not so far, with the Dow losing 650 points yesterday, 2.5%, and down further today. Maybe not so good. And, of course, no more spending bill. I mean, that's not going to be done before Election Day. Not now with a week to go. Not going to happen. So that's what the market has been living off of. These BS headlines that there's going to be more spending of $2 trillion that we don't have. And again, no major issue, no major conversation on the fact that we don't have this money. But evidently it's perfectly okay to borrow it and print it. And of course the people have no idea what that actually means at the end of the day. Then on the other side, you have former President Barack Obama in the state of Florida today, which of course is a battleground state, in Orlando, campaigning for his former Vice President Joe Biden, attacking Donald Trump. Most definitely gets under the skin of Donald Trump, which you can see via his tweets and other comments. There is just a lot of animus between these two guys, and especially for Trump towards Obama. He just gets under his skin like nobody's business. If Obama criticizes Trump, he cannot take it at all. Joe Biden was in the state of Georgia today for a couple stops. Interesting to see him in Georgia. I don't believe that state was won by a Democrat since Bill Clinton in 1992. But it does appear that he has a chance. And there is a couple Senate seats up for grabs. and that could go, one of the seats could potentially go to a Democratic contender. The other one seems to be pretty solid for the Republican, but anything could happen. But the very fact that Biden is there spending time and money is looking like they are trying to, of course, expand as many votes as they can possibly get into their camp to seal the deal, because the state of Georgia has 16 electoral college votes, and if Joe Biden is able to peel away Georgia, well, that's going to make it quite difficult for President Trump to pull off a victory as well, even if Donald Trump is able to pull out a victory in the state of Florida. A couple other states that Biden will continue to be campaigning throughout this week, and other states as well, back up to those Rust Belt states. I do believe Michigan, Wisconsin. I imagine he'll make another stop in Pennsylvania as well. Probably behoove him as well to even stop by in the state of Iowa. Why not? You're there. Obama and Biden won the state of Iowa in 2008 and 2012. Donald Trump won it in 2016, and that is up for grabs as well. Same thing with a Senate seat that could turn from Republican to Democrat as well, being a part of this broader blue wave, which is most definitely a possibility in this election. So we'll get to the vote count and some other electoral college math here shortly, but I do want to get through some of the market performance for today. We have the dollar index trading up 93.126, so we're regaining that 93 handle. Some weakness in the euro. On the index front, overnight futures trading has the Dow Jones Industrial Average giving back. It is down about 0.5%. The S&P 500 is also down about 0.4%. The NASDAQ 100 is also down about 0.4%. Cash trade in Japan is down currently about 0.33%. A sea of red across the pond in Europe. UK markets giving back 1 percentage point. Germany also down another percentage point. Again, they sold off drastically yesterday. French markets giving back 1.8. Italian markets 1.5. And the Spanish markets down 2.14%. A huge sell-off in the Spanish markets. Spain is putting on some tight restrictions with respect to COVID-19. And their banks are in shambles, as is basically the entire banking system in Europe. And the euro is going to collapse within this decade. This is not the first time I have stated this on this podcast. I've stated it many times before, but I believe the European Union is going to disintegrate. But I most definitely believe that the euro, the currency of the European Union, will most definitely disintegrate within this decade. There's too much debt. The ECB, the European Central Bank, has their pedal to the metal. It's going to the street. That's how much pressure they're putting on the pedal right now. Their balance sheet is going through the roof, trying to treat money printing as the panacea for everything. It is not. It is causing more problems. The negative interest rates, or close to it, is just the death knell for these banking systems and for these economies. That's what the Japanese have been contending with. It's now what the Europeans are contending with, and it's what the American financial system is currently contending with and is going to be contending with a lot more vocally and forcefully here over the coming months and years. So this is not good by any stretch of the imagination. This lines up with what we have been hearing from the IMF with respect to a potential digital currency, having another Bretton Woods meeting, which basically calls into question the reserve status of the U.S. dollar as the global reserve currency. If the U.S. dollar loses that global reserve currency, your living standards are going to drop the drop of a hat. That's how bad it will be. And it's coming. It is coming, and people, of course, are not prepared for this. But you cannot have a $27 trillion national debt. You cannot run $4 trillion national deficits and think that nothing bad is going to happen. Now, if you want to make that argument, well, then you have discovered or created the free lunch. So that means you no longer have to pay your taxes, and you no longer have to pay your bills, because what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If the government can print money to pay their bills, then they don't need us to pay their bills via taxes. And if they can print money to pay their bills, then they can print money to pay ours, because there's no negative side effects to this. Those questions need to be asked. They are not. And this whole idea of modern monetary theory, MMT, and UBI, Universal Basic Income, this is not discussed by Thunder Thumbs or Sleepy Joe. These idiots don't bring it up. And none of the idiots who interview them bring it up either. But this is what we're marching down towards, so you better prepare yourself. Australian cash trade is currently up about 0.3%. On the commodity front, we have WTI trading at $38.69 a barrel. Brent is at $40.46. Natural gas still with that three handle at $3.02. Gold and silver, okay days today, but still a little bit choppy overnight. We have gold at $1,907 an ounce. Silver is currently down about 0.8%, trading at $24.36 an ounce. On the bond front, Uncle Sam's 10-year junk note yielding 0.77%. Again, that's the 10-year, 0.77%. A continual flight to safety, if you will, bidding up the price of the bonds, putting downward pressure on the yield. So there you have it. That is some of the market performance. To the early vote count. Allow me to refresh this, see where we are. Beautiful. 70,500,000. 70.5 million early votes have been cast. This is updated as of 11:51 p.m. I'm doing this slightly past midnight tonight. 70.5 million. Unbelievable. Mail ballots account for 47.2 million. In-person votes account for 23.3 million. As a percent of the 2016 turnout, we were at 51.2%. So over half of the turnout of 2016 has already been voted in the books. Quite astonishing, to say the least, and we still have the rest of this week to go. Of course, every state is different, so look that up if you want to partake in early voting as to when the polls will close. Some of them will go through the weekend. Some of them will stop on Friday. Every state is different. The election and how that is run is up to the individual state. Looking at Texas, again, turnout as a percent of 2016 total turnout. The state of Texas, 87%. 87%, I believe that's what? 7.8 million votes cast. I believe there was about 9 million votes cast in all of 2016. So, the potential for Texas, this is why Texas is actually a toss-up state. This is what could happen. If you get this type of turnout, if it's for Joe Biden, this could be pretty crucial here. And it could be devastating for the Trump campaign. Now, of course, if this enthusiasm is for Donald Trump, then you're singing a different song. But if you want to be consistent with what the polls are showing, then it appears that this is leaning Biden-Harris. But again, anything can happen. This is 2020, and the president is the president. He pulled it off in 2016. He can pull it off again in 2020. All depends on how effective their closing arguments are, how effective their last week of spending and ad campaign and targeting is, and really getting voters to the polls to vote in early voting, get their mail ballots in the mail, and then, of course, last but not least, and just as important, is to show up on the 3rd of November to vote. So let's go through a couple other states here on a percentage basis of 2016's turnout. California is already at 50%. State of Nevada is at 66%. Arizona is at 68%. New Mexico is at 74%. Florida is at 67%. Georgia is at 71%. North Carolina is at 72%. Pennsylvania is at 30%. Ohio at 41.5%. Michigan at 46%. Wisconsin at 49%. Iowa at 49.5%. Call it 50%. Those are some of the battleground states, some of the states with largest populations. So, grand total, again, 70.5 million votes already cast. If the political analysts are correct in their projections of 150 to 160 million Americans voting in this election, well, we're already almost halfway there for the 2020 turnout, total turnout. I mean, we're getting a few million votes here a day, at least. So if this continues, we're most definitely going to top the 50% mark for the 2020 turnout. Again, that's the early vote as a representation, as a percentage of the total turnout for 2020. And you could very easily get to 80 million, 90 million, maybe even 100 million. Just completely staggering, which is why we could have a result on election night or the day after. Again, if it's close, comes down to a couple key states that have different laws as to when they can receive ballots and when they can start counting them, then maybe, yes, this could turn into something that could take a week to find out. If it's really close and we get the court system involved, well, then it's anybody's guess. Weeks, months, who knows? But we're going to find out in a week as to what's really the case. Now, if we look at the Electoral College map, this is off of the Real Clear Politics website. And of course, you can build your own map. But I'm not going to go through that today. We've done that enough, but I'm sure I'll do that a couple more times before next Tuesday. But if you look at Real Clear Politics and you just click on their map that says no toss-ups, okay? So that just means if they have to make a decision based off of the polls, Real Clear Politics says here is the outcome, okay? Well, here is their outcome. According to Real Clear Politics, no toss-up states, Biden, 311 Electoral College votes, Trump, 227. Again, you need 270. That gives the Biden campaign a nice cushion of 41 extra votes. So that means Donald Trump has to do some digging. And even in this map, Real Clear Politics gives Donald Trump Florida, Texas, Georgia, Ohio. Joe Biden, according to this map, gets North Carolina, gets Pennsylvania, gets Michigan, gets Wisconsin, wins Minnesota, flips Iowa, so now Biden claims Iowa, flips Arizona, and maintains Nevada, and that gives him 311. So even if Donald Trump should get back and re-win, if you will, North Carolina to get 15 more votes, and Pennsylvania to get 20 more Electoral College votes, that would be an additional 35 votes for Donald Trump. Well, that's only going to take him to, 262. He still needs 8 more. If he gets Iowa, that's only 6 more. Not enough. Now, if he got Arizona, that would put him over. But that again assumes that he would re-win North Carolina and Pennsylvania, but he would still have to flip Arizona or maintain Arizona, because even those extra districts out of Nebraska and Maine, it's split. Joe Biden wins Nebraska, and Donald Trump gets the Maine vote, according, again, to Real Clear Politics. That's what I'm saying, folks. Can Donald Trump win? Yes, he can. But it's an uphill battle. You have to do the math. You have to look at what's going on. We got a week to go. A lot of the polls that are going to come in over this week are going to really paint a better picture as to what's going on. And if you want further and even more detailed analysis, I would refer you to 538.com, spelled out, 538.com. Of course, that is indicative of the grand total number of votes that comprise the Electoral College. I'm sure many of you are familiar with 538 and Nate Silver, the founder and forecast modeler of 538.com. So even if we look at their model, and they also have an interactive Electoral College map, but what makes theirs different, and it makes it interesting, their Electoral College map, is if you change a state to Donald Trump or to Joe Biden, the model behind their Electoral College map math will adjust other states as well, based off of demographics, based off of the geographic location of that particular state. So if you're going to claim that Donald Trump wins the state of Florida, then that might increase the likelihood that he will also win the state of Georgia. So Georgia will also turn red if it happened to be a toss-up state when you were looking at it. Same thing with Joe Biden. If you give Florida to Joe Biden, then the likelihood that he can flip Georgia to his corner also shows when you play with that interactive map. So I suggest you do it if you want something to do over the coming days, because more polls come in. They have a different weighting system as to how they view the polls, demographics, geographic location. Of course, they discuss the model on their podcast and in their write-ups, but they're not going to give you away the secret sauce. That's proprietary. That's what makes them them. But it's interesting to see how they are viewing the race at this point in time, where you currently have, according to 538, let's see, Biden wins 88 out of 100 times. Donald Trump wins 12 out of 100 times. This is when they simulate the election, according to them, 40,000 times to see who wins most often. And I believe they do this several times throughout the day. But again, according to 538, 88 out of 100, Joe Biden wins. 12 out of 10, Donald Trump wins. Then when you sort of look at it more closely by state basis, 538 gives Michigan to Joe Biden, Nevada to Joe Biden, Wisconsin to Joe Biden, Pennsylvania to Joe Biden, the 2nd District of Nebraska to Joe Biden, Arizona leans Joe Biden, Florida leads Joe Biden, North Carolina leads to Joe Biden, 2nd District out of Maine to Joe Biden, Georgia to Joe Biden, and even Iowa to Joe Biden. Now, some of this, too, has changed. I have seen this somewhat the other way, with Donald Trump having Iowa and Georgia and some others. So these things will change daily as more information comes in. So this is the final week. If this stuff interests you, this is where you can find it, realclearpolitics538.com, the Election Project. And you're looking at the same stuff I'm looking at. Maybe we come to different conclusions, but that's perfectly okay. But I'm just giving you what these guys do for a living, and that's what it's showing me. And then when you look at the differences between 2016 and 2020 and the respective candidates, I still lean that the victory is going to head towards Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. I take no pleasure in saying this. I don't want either of these idiots in there. Again, I want the Libertarian candidate, Joe Jorgensen, to win, to start educating the people on these structural issues, because then and only then will we really start to rebuild this country in the right direction that we need. We continue on this path that we are on, which we are going to, because these two jokers don't talk about anything else, then you're going to be paying for it. But don't be surprised, come the midterm elections in 2022 and come the presidential election in 2024, you're going to be scratching your head wondering why nothing changed. Well, it's because you keep voting for the same idiots and expecting a different result. But there you have it. I'll keep you updated as these numbers are updated. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Koritis. Godspeed.